Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar about avoiding SAP licensing and audit pitfalls. To get the most out of today's webinar, please take a moment to get familiar with this software environment that you're in. You'll all be muted for the duration of the event. If at any time you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A chat box on your screen, and we'll address them either during the course of our discussion or at the end. Please don't be shy. We would love to hear from you if you do have questions. Today's session will be recorded and you'll receive a copy after the event. We'll also provide some relevant documentation, so please do take some time to look at that. So first, our legal disclaimer. We need to let you know that there may be forward-looking statements subject to change over time, and that the content of this presentation and any documents associated are subject to intellectual property rights of Rimini Street. A copy of this entire presentation will be sent out in the next few days, and if you'd like to take the time to read that in full, you can, but we're not going to linger any longer on this today. So, introductions. I'm your host, James Ratcliffe. I'm the Service Solution Architect for the SAP estate here at Rimini Street. I've been in the SAP support and maintenance arena for nearly 25 years now, with experience in enterprise support, standard support, max attention, and third-party support offerings. I have with me my colleague Ronan Fox. I'll allow Ronan to introduce himself. Ronan?
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Ronan Fox. I'm a Service Solution Architect at Rimini Street for SAP products, just like James. I started my journey with SAP back in version 3.1, so quite an old timer. I'm very happy to be here with you. Good morning.
Thank you, Ronan. And with me, I have Doug Gibson from our partner Invictus. Doug, if you could do an introduction.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Doug Gibson, Invictus Partners. We're a licensed advisory firm, so we work with clients all over the world, helping them, keep ahead of things related to SAP, keeping compliant, helping them with audit defenses, getting an understanding of where they go with their transition. Do they go S4, don't go S4, go RISE, and just help them through those journeys as well. And also clients that are, either considering third-party support or already on third-party support, how do we support them through that area? My background we've been doing this for 8 years, and my background in SAP is twice at SAP. Predominantly in the database technology space, I launched and built the HANA business for them across Asia, and then also part of the what they used to call the Office of CIO and CFO space, which was the business objects, all of the financial stuff, as well as all of the technology and the old NetWeaver stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you, Doug. So what are we going to talk about today? Very quickly, we are going to talk about the SAP Cloud Strategy and RISE with SAP and what that means. We're going to talk about some SAP license compliance and audits and some best practices. We're going to talk about license negotiations with SAP. We're going to talk about options for clients and their SAP roadmap and any key considerations for moving to third-party support, which is what Rimini Street specialise in. So, without further ado, RISE with SAP. What is it? This is a new announcement from SAP. RISE is essentially a bundle of existing SAP assets that provide customers with business transformation as a service. What does that really mean? These are actually a number of pre-existing services, tools, and methodologies from SAP built as a wrapper to try and take control for clients and customers around migrating to S/4HANA. So this is essentially a process that SAP have got for moving their clients to SAP S/4HANA in the cloud, because SAP are a cloud company. It's about moving people to subscription, it's about moving people to cloud, and it's taking control of the roadmap, basically becoming a vendor roadmap. Now, this is based on feedback that SAP got from their user groups, that they wanted SAP to take more control of the whole ecosystem, but not necessarily for the best reasons and not necessarily the best way of doing this, but this is the way they're doing it. Now, from a use case perspective, a small or medium-sized enterprise might find this a really useful strategy and a really useful tool and product, because as a small or medium-sized enterprise, you might not want to have the oversight and deal with all of the requirements of moving to the cloud, and that's hosting, dealing with licensing, so go to subscription. You might not want to deal with partners. You may just want one source of information, one contact to actually deal with all of that for you. And there are case studies out there from SAP where this is working for small and medium-sized enterprises. For large enterprises, this might not be quite so clear and uncomplicated, because they will have already got large agreements with SIs and partners to do hosting, to do subscription models, to do integrations, to do rollouts for them. So not necessarily maybe the best option. And thirdly, on this point, partners themselves might not actually like the fact that SAP is trying to take back control of the roadmap, and we're starting to see examples of this. So, for example, IBM recently announced IBM breakthrough with IBM on Rise with SAP or Soar with Accenture, both wrappers to go around a wrapper so that they can continue to enable to roll out and support these clients. So, really big tool, really big change out there, but obviously it really depends on your size and your scale from a client perspective, whether this is the right thing for you to move forward with. Doug, from your perspective as a partner, what are you seeing on this?
Yes, it's an interesting one, right? Because first of all, Rise isn't a product, all right? It's a go-to-market model that SAP has. It, like you said, it's a wrapper that pulls stuff together. So it's a go-to-market model. It's flexible, right? So, where it's all about the drive, obviously, is to promote the whole S4. But we're also seeing where people are being pushed and said, don't worry, take your business suite up there, move it into there. We'll turn your licensing model into a cloud subscription type model. And over time, you can move to S4. So it's quite an interesting one. So what it does show is it shows the behavior is not necessarily about, yes, it is about pushing S4, but it's first and foremost about getting clients into the cloud and turning that current maintenance base and all that sort of stuff into a subscription model. Right? Remember, the PE ratios are now determined now based on cloud, not like they were in the past around support services. It's now around cloud. So everything is about how can I turn that revenue stream into a subscription model, which shows that we are now supporting it as a cloud company. And look, SAP is not the only one. Everybody's doing it, right? Every vendor's doing it because the market is driving them to go down a path of cloud. So they're looking at ways to do this. I think where you're seeing, I agree 100% that the smaller companies, it could actually make some good sense, because also their ability to negotiate with some of the hyperscalers to get those sort of rates, potentially not. However, what we're finding is those clients that are, like you said, are big, and they've already got a massive spend already allocated out with reserve instances around Azure, AWS, or GCP as an example. The challenge then comes in is how do you retire anything that you move into Rise on Azure, because if it's Azure platform, you've already got a committed spend on Azure. How are you going to retire your Rise spend? Now there's talks of maybe they might do it, but there's nothing complete, right? Because they're completely different enterprises. So that's the number one challenge that you've got as well. And I think also what you're going to see is, they talk about it's one contract, but the challenge that you have is, yes, you're going to have your software vendor and they're going to help facilitate some services, but there's still a lot of services that they can't do, that the SI firms are going to have to do it. And SAP, the SI firms, and it sounds like a great story, SAP will control all of it and deliver it all for you. Lovely marketing, right? It's a beautiful marketing pitch. In reality, do you really think an Accenture, a Capgemini, a TCS, a Wipro, and these guys are going to sit and go, sure, SAP, you drive everything. We'll just do what you tell us to do. Like you said, they're already coming up with their own options as well. So what we're seeing is clients are going, what is it? Do it to S4, to not S4, do a Rise, where's it all at? They're getting hit with a lot of the stuff, and it's really pushing down in here. What's also changed is this financial year, all sales reps are now compensated on cloud revenue only. So all their comp plans are changed to cloud, not perpetual. So as soon as you do that, you see, here's Rise, the big push around Rise, like I said in some of the other stories I took you about there, but the fact that sales teams are now compensated, their quota retirement is only on cloud, tells you exactly what it's going to be. Hi, I don't know what your problem is, but the answer is cloud. And the challenge then comes with a lot of clients that we're seeing is going, I love it, but the stories, SAP is an amazing marketing machine, right? And they tell great, really, really good stories. But the issue is how, when you peel it back, how accurate is that value realization? So what I mean by that is everyone says, oh, you can save so much money going to cloud. Yes, but SAP is a component. Now, when you look at if it's currently sitting on a data center and my data center is spent based on real estate as opposed to rack space or whatever, I can only retire certain things. So people need to look at the total cost of ownership and not say, oh, we can retire X, because you're not retiring the real estate. Unless you're physically shutting down data centers and stuff, you're not going to get the savings in there from an infrastructure point of view. We've seen this when clients move to AWS and Azure and everything just as a hyperscaler. There's economies of scale that start to kick in at a certain time. So these are things that clients are saying, well, should I be doing this thing? Is there these challenges? And that's where we're seeing a lot of clients going, there's a lot of confusion because the reps are all like, here it is, it's all about this, but they're not ready. right? And then they're going, well, if I'm not ready, I've still got 2027 to get to there, so why should I do that? There's already people like in the US user group that's come out. There's huge concerns around the skill sets in the marketplace to support these moves. So, you know, you start to see these things come up, and it goes, like I said, great story and a good vision to be to, and I think it's the right vision for them, but the ability to execute is going to be fraught with a lot of challenges, right? We saw it when S4 started as well. There was a lot of challenges in S4, a lot of bad stories. I think the stories that they promote here at the moment, there's some good stories out there, but you don't always hear the bad ones, right? And I think it's just every single client needs to do their own due diligence and make sure that it's relevant to them, but check everything. Get independent advice. Don't get it from an SI firm because they've already got a vested interest because their bench is determining what the answer is for you. Don't get that, you know, and I'm not saying use us. I'm just saying use people like us because we don't have a dog in this fight. We're there to provide advice and guidance only and what's right for our clients. We don't implement and we don't sell. So that's important because then that drives the outcome that you're looking for. But, you know, definitely go get independent advice because, you know, the vendors can paint a great story and so can the SIs. They'll take you on the beautiful journey and it ends up costing you a hell of a lot of money. And, yeah, I can talk for hours on it, but let's stop there for a bit. Right?
Wonderful. So ultimately what you're saying is obviously a lot of due diligence is required, but not just looking forward to the future in terms of what your roadmap is and what the future state could be, but also potentially what is your exit strategy? Is that where you're saying, you know, think about how, you know, if you're handing over your license and maintenance over to a subscription model, even with an on-premise deployment in the cloud, so you're saying you do need to think about what is your exit strategy in the future should you want to make any particular changes?
Oh, absolutely. Just on that, so the big thing that people need to understand is like any SaaS model, right? Once you move to a SaaS model, the only thing you own is your data. Okay, that's it. So if at the end of the period you go, I'm not happy, I want to take my toys and go home, you can take your data. But all of the rest of the stuff stays behind. And that's the thing when, like we talk to clients and we say, well, why don't you take, if you're going to S4, take a perpetual license and put it in the cloud, but you own it. And keep it as a perpetual license, because once it's stabilized, if you're happy at a point, you can then go to a third-party support provider if you want to or not, but you can then do more with that. You don't get the same, I call it flexibility in inverted commas with cloud, you know, like a subscription model, but it's also a very familiar model that people are doing. There are nuances with cloud, and cloud is actually, the issue with cloud is the ability to overburst very, very quickly because it's easy, it's convenient, right? Whereas there's a lot more checks and balances when you do stuff on the on-premise model with the license keys and all that sort of stuff. It's very, very different when you start doing it in the cloud. So yeah, absolutely, because if you've got an exit strategy at a point in time where you go, you know what, we're stable and I'd like to go to a Rimini Street, you can't, right?
Yeah. Take control of your roadmap and rather than be on the vendor roadmap, have your own business-driven roadmap. It's something Rimini Street talk about regularly, trying to just create that awareness. Brilliant. Thank you, Doug. So, talking about license compliance and audits, how does SAP target clients for an audit and where do customers get caught out? This is your area of speciality, Doug. Question to you.
Yeah. So thanks for that. Yeah, so if you have a look at it, I think let's talk about what the formal notification is. Sales is separate. Compliance is separate. They don't talk to each other. Now, if anyone's been in the IT industry for longer than 5 minutes, everybody knows that in every software vendor, they all say the same thing. But you know, IT audit teams don't sit there and go wake at night and go, oh, I wonder what my propensity model could be, right? They do a bit of that, but there's also a blend of, you know what, you're not moving, you haven't bought in a while, you know, you're not buying into my journey, my vision, I think you need a bit of a nudge, right? So you have these sort of things. Or you're not on support, I want to get you back. And if I catch you hard enough, I can bring you back because SAP reps are now paid on support reinstatement. So if you're off support, they're paid to try and get you back. Right, so so these are what we're seeing in the market. Right, is these sort of things audits are starting to pick up now more. If I'm a betting man, which I do actually, unfortunately, I like the ponies. But you know, if I was looking at this thing, I would say you're going to see an increase in these because about 5 years ago, Oracle did the same thing. Oracle moved everything to a compensation plan around cloud. People weren't adopting cloud. They were like, nah, you're too early. I'm not interested. They were auditing the heck out of them because what they were doing was they were trying to drive a commercial outcome through an audit. Now, good reps will work with their clients. The average reps won't. They'll sit there and go, the clients aren't moving, and I'm going to, you know, hit them. And we're starting to see that behavior come through. And like I said, it's not just SAP. It's tied to all the industry. But it's a behavior you see. If reps can't get movement, they will use the stick to try and get movement. And some of the stuff that they're catching where we're seeing audits come through is, there's the usual stuff around users and all that sort of stuff. But what we're finding is still indirect access is still a major problem for most organizations. We're working with a number of them right now across Europe where the client's feeling very confident, but an hour into a workshop, they're going, oh my God, it's totally different. Why didn't SAP tell us this? And SAP hasn't done a great job in explaining indirect access, to be honest. They haven't said to every single rep, you need to go to every single one of your clients and run through scenarios so they can understand it and remain compliant. They haven't done that. And most clients are getting caught out with indirect access at the end, right? Yep. You're also then having things like HANA runtime is a big one that's coming up now, right? So now they use some tools that an SAP note, which you can't access unless you're under an audit. And this note goes and looks and sees when you're in breach of HANA runtime. Are you writing SQL scripts underneath it that you're not allowed to do? Are you querying the database directly? And all of a sudden you find just one of those, and the answer is you have to convert to full use. Right? So all of a sudden that's a significant, and you're talking, depending on the size of your database, it could be millions of euros that you're getting converted to. So we start to see that. They're also hitting things around NetWeaver third-party platform access. So these are third-party applications using the NetWeaver platform. People don't think about those ones, but they get picked up. OpenText, ReadSoft, all these guys talk to it, and you need a license for it. So these are things that are catching people out, and they're not easy, but they're also catching people out on just understanding their definitions of use. And as you know, most SAP stuff isn't public knowledge. So understanding that, I own 5, I'm using 5, yes, but are you using it within the definitions of use? So those are just some of the areas that we're finding organizations, getting caught out with, right? And unfortunately, it just needs 1 or 2 of them and you've got a problem. So I think it's just really getting clients to get ahead of the game. If they're considering Rimini Street, do research early. If you're looking to move to Rimini Street this year, guys, don't buy anything, all right? Because it triggers what they call the initial term. So SAP has got written into their contracts over the last couple of years a thing called the initial term, which basically says if you buy something, it's tied to that transaction. If you buy, you pay for the remainder of the financial year. So if you buy it now, we're in March, you will pay for the next 9 months plus the next 12 months. So SAP uses that, and then all of a sudden, if you're thinking of handing your notice in, you're locked in. So if you can get away with not buying something, do it. Right? And some clients have said, yeah, but I need to buy indirect access. And we go, well, okay, number one, indirect access is not a physical product, it's a right to use. So you can challenge that and say, I can buy that when I'm off support because it is not a physical product. I'm not getting anything for it. I'm just having the right to use. And there is precedent that's been set that it has been bought around the world in a couple of clients. Not loads, because SAP still has to approve it, but there's ways to do that as well. Right, so just be prepared. Make sure you understand what you're doing. Make sure you're ready for it. If you've got stuff on HEC, be careful, because SAP will, I know there are still some people on HEC, SAP will say that there's SLAs that you cannot run unsupported on HEC because they can't support their SLAs, which is crazy because it's infrastructure SLAs, but that's SAP, the cloud company, remember? So these are some of the gotchas that you've got to look out for. But if you're prepared, there's a way to deal with it. And look, if you find there's a compliance problem, it's not an issue. You just deal with it when you come off support. And if SAP doesn't want to give you a good price, guess what? You go through a partner, because the partners automatically get a discount anyway, so a partner can provide you a discount if SAP doesn't want to. All right.
So it is perfectly possible to, it is perfectly possible to, as an SAP customer, buy licenses via a partner to look after your system and run your estate.
Oh, absolutely, right. So, because one of the big fallacies that they talk about is that you can't buy products when you leave. Well, first of all, the statement is a bit blurry because you can physically buy more of what you own. So whatever you own today, and say you're coming off support and you own 20 different license entitlements, you can buy more of those because SAP cannot stop you buying more of those, because that would basically mean that SAP is putting you in a compliance situation. So you're absolutely entitled to buy more of those. What you can't do is buy net new, so a brand new perpetual product. You can buy cloud all you want. There's no issues. But you can't buy a net new perpetual product, right? So if you're saying, I've got all my stuff, but I now want to buy APO. I never had it before. SAP won't sell that to you because they can't sell that to you from a RevRec point of view. They need the support to go with it. Right? And then you'd have to come back to support. So that's what. So if you're looking to go in that, and maybe it's this year or next year, if you're thinking about it now, but you're only doing it next year, look at what your roadmap looks like for the next 12, 18, 24 months, and maybe just buy one. So you have an entitlement so that at a later stage you can buy more of it. So you don't have to commit to it, right? So you always still have the power, right? It's how you negotiate with SAP. And if SAP is being full of it, go to a partner. Partner will always take your money and help you.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry, go on, Renan.
So I just wanted to emphasize on the first point about the audit. Doug, am I right to say that an audit will come anyway? I mean, we should always be prepared for an audit. And also the indirect usage audit will always come, because I'm hearing sometimes from customers saying, oh, we only use the user model. We don't intend to use the indirect usage. SAP will audit you on that anyway, right?
So two things. So absolutely, first one, spot on. Look, audits are like death and taxes. It's not if, it's when. You're all going to get hit. So everyone goes, I do an audit every year. And I go, that's a self-audit. We're talking an extended audit. They are ramping up, right? So we are seeing those ramp up. And that's just a fact. And, people say, you're not going to get audited because you're going to third party, or you're getting audited to do this. No, you're getting audited because it's your time. It's very simple, right? You're not buying, you're not doing that sort of stuff. Whether you're going to Rimini or not, that's not really the issue. The issue is more, you're not committed to my roadmap. I'm not getting money out of you. Guess what? I'm going to have a chat to you, right? So that's what you're starting to see. The indirect access, where organizations, because you can still leverage the legacy model of users and sales order processing and purchase order processing. You can still use that versus direct access, digital access. But the two things to remember, when you go to S4 Cloud and everything, you're not allowed to use this. You can only use digital access, number one, okay? Number two is, as you do more and more automation, it's going to be harder and harder. And as a business, we want to do more automation because that's how you get efficiencies. It's going to get harder and harder to do that with the legacy model in the end. But if you move over to the digital access model, that's when you negotiate and say, I'm moving to this model. Hang on a second. I'm now retiring 25 professional users, 127 limited professional users, these sort of things. I want to use that as a credit. So I'm not just buying. I want to get a credit because I don't want to, otherwise I'm paying double bubble SAP. So give me a credit for this. So that's the sort of stuff that you can negotiate when you talk to the client, to the SAP guys.
Right. Wonderful, thank you. And I think that brings us on to the next point about any recommendations of best practice and preparing for audits. As a Rimini Street clients, we do, as Renan pointed out, Rimini Street clients are audited just as much as SAP clients, and no more. There's no evidence that Rimini Street clients are audited any more than SAP clients. But we always tell our clients to be prepared for these audits. They will happen, and be ready. But from a best practice recommendation, what would you recommend very quickly there, Doug?
What with regards to being prepared?
Yes.
Okay, so I think making sure you do the real estate. Make sure that your SLAW and your USM is up to date, and you're in the business object side. Make sure you do your LMBIs. Make sure your thresholds are set correctly. Now, one thing to remember with the SLAW report, right, and your USMM, the USMM and SLAWs will record everything that's actual usage except for users. Users are recorded based on allocation only. Right? So if you classified someone as a limited professional, SAP is not going to, the SLAW report's not going to change it. Right? So you need to then make sure that you understand the actual usage within the definitions of use to make sure those licenses are allocated correctly. Because what SAP does is they'll come and check it and go, hang on a second, these 25 people are categorized as limited professional, doesn't exist, their role is beyond that, you get promoted to professional. And they make you buy a professional upgrade to professional licenses. So understanding that, the LMBI is also an important one to keep checking, because anything to do with business objects from a licensing point of view is a bit of a dog, right? Because you had so many iterations of it that came over the years and the complexities that came with it. But make sure you check your LMBIs, make sure you look at your allocations. So, for example, a concurrent user device is great, but make sure you set it within your license thresholds. When you've got the named user ones, make sure you're allocating them correctly, because they're very, very easy to get out of sync. And that's where SAPs can catch you as well. Making sure that you run your SLAWs to look at your usage associated to the rest of the licenses, like SAP Landscape Transformation or, HP Quality Center, these sort of ones that are terabyte driven, and that, double check on those ones as well. So those are some of the big ones, just to keep check. Make sure that you allocate your licenses correctly, like if it's a technical user and all that sort of stuff, because if SAP sees test users in production, like that says you're not keeping a tight ship. So they'll when they're looking at it, they'll dive deeper into your user allocations. You want your user allocations to look clean so that SAP doesn't have a reason to go diving deeper.
Wonderful,
That's
thank
just
you.
A couple of tips.
Wonderful, thank you. From a Rimini Street client perspective, one of the questions we're always asked before clients join us is SAP tells us we have to use Solution Manager to do audits. And from our experience, we know this is totally not true. Solution Manager is not needed for auditing. Solution Manager is not needed for even supporting your SAP systems. Right. It's the tool and mechanism that SAP use to deliver support for you. So we know full well, it is not needed, and there are ways to do it. There is always a cost-effective alternative that existed before Solution Manager. So certainly for our clients, there is no change in terms of the volumes of audits, and certainly you can, as a Rimini Street client, prepare for audits as well. So some of the best practice and recommendations there. So moving on, another question we do get asked often is, will I have less negotiation power when I've already terminated my maintenance? From our perspective, absolutely not. We see the relationship with SAP usually improves once you've left SAP support. As Doug mentioned earlier, you can absolutely buy further licenses for products you already own. So you already know what you've been purchasing. You already know the products you own. You know the rates and the discounts that you've been getting. So actually it puts you in the driving seat in driving this business-driven roadmap. It puts you in the position where you actually have more negotiation power, because all SAP will want to do is win you back as a customer and win your business. So could you imagine SAP turning around and saying, no, you cannot buy a software as a service product, or no, you cannot buy more licenses? No account manager is going to say that to you. And it's certainly something we see regularly. We have a client here in the UK, a company called Kent and Essex Police, who are very kindly on regular basis spoken to our client base about this. They annually purchase more licenses for their SAP Business Suite. They grow regularly. The savings that they've made have allowed them to actually continue to grow, continue to roll out functionality and increase their user base. So are purchasing more licenses. Doug, from your experience working with other clients, not just Rimini clients, what do you see around this area?
No, absolutely right. So we've seen it where you can still get good deals, right? So number one, when you leave, right, SAP is still going to keep wanting to talk to you, right? Especially now because your perpetual's gone, but they want to sell you cloud. So they're still going to always want to be engaging with you, right? So, and you're still going to have, even though you've moved to a Rimini Street, the key thing to remember is you still have a relationship with SAP. It's still a strategic vendor for you in the sense of it's a platform that's running your business, right? So there's still going to be, it's going to be part of your roadmap in one way, shape, or other. So still maintaining that relationship with SAP is going to be key. By doing that, and depending on, like, we've got one client of ours, a big utility, and what I love about it is, like, said to SAP, if you want to still be part of my roadmap, no problem. I would love you to be, but treat me accordingly, right? And work with me to help me on this journey. I'm going to buy stuff along the way that you might not be interested in. There's no support, but eventually we're going to get on that journey. But if you don't walk with me on that journey, you ain't going to be part of the tender at the end, right? So it's, but we have seen that when you work the relationship well, it's like anything, right? You invest in that relationship still. Just the fact that you've moved this to third-party support is irrelevant, right? SAP, let's be honest, right? They want the cloud journey. Yes, they don't want to lose any money, but they want the cloud journey. So you're still having that conversation with them. So you absolutely still can. Now, sometimes depending on the rep, you might get someone who's a bit full of it. So go above them. Absolutely. Because remember, compensation drives behavior. It's very, very simple. So if a rep is not getting something out of it, the behavior will be accordingly. But you go higher up the food chain, they will get compensated on it. Because as you go higher up the food chain, the compensation changes to not just that. It changes to customer satisfaction. It changes to retention. It changes to potential acquisition targets. There's a whole raft of things that go with it that give you power. But, we've seen it with a lot of clients where if you're off support and you're getting audited, it's slightly different because, you're kind of caught with your hand in the cookie jar. So they don't have to give you discounts, right? And we've seen where they haven't, but we've actually seen where we've got away with a whole lot of other stuff as well. So it depends on if you're just buying stuff, there's always a good chance to get a good deal still. Now, look, if you had 85% before, you might not get 85, you might get 60 or 70%. But then bearing in mind, you're not paying 22% on top of that either, right? So those are things to consider.
Brilliant, thank you. Which moves us on to our next point quite nicely, which is around license negotiations with SAP. I suppose this is a lot for you, Doug, as well as ourselves. What approach is recommended for negotiation with SAP on audit outcomes?
So if you look at it on an audit outcome, so let's just play two scenarios, right? So scenario one is I'm on support and I have an audit, right? It's how do I work with you to then say, okay, these are the things. The big thing, first thing, every single audit is challengeable, no matter who the vendor is, right? There's always mistakes. So every single audit is challengeable because it's about interpretation. It's based on the data I provided you. Now, I might not have given you accurate data. It could have pulled the wrong things. It could have been in a number of areas, right? So every audit is challengeable. But what you're looking at when you're doing it as well, what SAP is looking for is if you're on support, is they're trying to find a way that they can use that to then get. They don't want to get it that you have to buy everything again, right? Because there's nothing in it for them. The rep gets cents in the dollar. So what you're starting to see is, well, how can I I'll clean up your compliance, but what they'll do is they'll say you get like 99% discount on that stuff because I want to give you down the other path. But one thing to make sure that you do is don't buy stuff just to sort SAP out, right? Rather, if you end up paying a little bit more, but you're buying what you need, don't buy stuff that you don't, because shelfware, once you've got it, you can't get rid of it, no matter what anybody tells you. Everyone says, oh, you can reduce it. I'm going, it's not easy with SAP, because what they'll do is they'll say, your support base is 2 million euros as an example, therefore it's $440,000 and 440,000 euros. Now what SAP will say is, oh, you want to get rid of some of that shelfware? No problem. Buy some more. That'll replace it, because the net base doesn't go down, right? So don't buy stuff that you don't need. Rather, if you have to pay a little bit more, pay a little bit more, because I promise you, you'll pay more for it in the long run if you buy stuff that you don't want, because you're going to end up with shelfware, or you're going to be pushed by SAP to drive there. When you're doing the audit outcomes as well, is make sure that you're pushing, because SAP will push things that and say, if you do this, we'll give you a credit to do stuff towards an S4, right? Read the terms on those ones, because it'll be a time bound. It'll say you have to move to S4 within the next 12 to 18 months. Now that's SAP basically then, through the audit, forcing you down a path of the migration. So all of a sudden, if you had a 6-year roadmap to go down to the S4 stuff, you've now just got it brought forward to 18 months. So what you need to do is make sure when you're negotiating, those are the sort of things that you need to look at. If you're looking at moving to a Rimini Street support, negotiate around the initial terms as well. Because the initial term, if you can get rid of that, you can pay your settlement and then you can still then move over. If you're off support, it's slightly different, right? Because what they'll do is they'll try use things to squash you and say, well, you know, like any good auditor, they'll make it as big as possible. And they go, oh, it's 20 million euros. But for a smidge of 500,000 euros, we can do the following. And everyone goes, oh my God, 500 compared to 10. That's fantastic. Okay, great. That's a good deal. It's not a good deal, right? You've got to make sure you've got to read through the fine print in a lot of these as well, right? Because compensation drives behavior. What are they getting back? Even though you're in an audit and you get caught, remember, you still have the power, right? And the power is called time. Delay it, delay it. And time doesn't kill deal, but it causes a lot of pressure, and they'll do stupid things to try and get it closed. And that gives power back to you as a customer as well.
I think that brings on to the next point quite nicely, which is when, in your recommendation, when would be the best time to buy licenses, especially if you're considering moving third-party support. So if you could run 2 scenarios for us, you know, pre-moving to support, and when is the best time to buy licenses after you change support?
So if you're doing it before moving to Rimini Street, what I would look at is saying, is it a true-up? And if it is a true-up, then rather look at buying it in the new year, right? Because if you've got a compliance problem and you haven't been audited and you know you've got a true-up, buy it then. Because what happens is if you buy it now, it's going to trigger the initial term, right? And yes, you can negotiate the initial term, but SAP doesn't have to give it to you, right? They could say, no, we're not supporting that. We're not approving that. You can't, you're locked in, right? And then it locks you in. So if you don't have to, always look at it. We always recommendations if it's truing up with professional users and extra licenses of these sort of things. If it's a net new product, different story. But let's just say it's a true-up. If it's a true-up, what we'd be recommending is rather, if you can, understand where it is, but then get it done in the new year, right? Because most of the time, this stuff starts coming up as you're getting close to giving a notice and you're realizing, shit, I might need some more products, right? So when you get closer to the end of September. So if you can hold off and do that, that's fine. If you're getting hit by an audit at that time, drag the audit, drag the audit, drag the audit. Okay, SAP wants the audit's done so they can try to do a deal in December to lock you in. But if you don't, if you can drag it, there's ways to drag it, right? Get an NDA in place. I have a third party working with me. I need a 3-way NDA. SAP and every vendor hates that. It takes ages and ages to do these. So there's ways you can buy time, right? So that's the one thing. So, but if it's a net new product, then you've got to look at it and go, okay, so if I have to have this now, then you've got to have a look at, well, what's that going to mean to me with regards to the initial term? And can I get away with the initial term or not? So that if it's a brand new product, that can potentially impact you moving. So you need to think very, very carefully about it. And also, why do you need that product? Is there not something else in the market? Especially considering that you're investing in technology, which is called, which SAP isn't investing in anymore. So why should you be looking at buying something else that's complementary to that? Because SAP is all putting all the investment into the cloud. So if you're going to look at saying, I want to buy another new product that I don't own today, but it's in an area that SAP is not investing in, I'd be looking outside to see if there's another option to have that a better best-of-breed solution potentially outside that can integrate into SAP.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you. I think we've answered the last point on this already, in that can I buy additional licenses when I'm not on SAP support? And we've already spoken about this a minute ago, saying you absolutely can buy additional licenses for products you already own when you don't have SAP maintenance. And as I said, Kent and Essex Police are one example of clients that do that annually for while under Rimini Street support, and they have been with us for a number of years. So we know it is absolutely feasible. And, you just take on the advice and guidance that we're giving you here today. You speak to people like Doug and partners that can help you with that sort of negotiation. And you absolutely can. It doesn't stop you doesn't stop your innovation around your system. It allows you to continue to actually innovate and grow your system without paying exorbitant costs for maintenance when that maintenance payment is going towards a product you may not need or want in the future. So you absolutely can. So, what are your options for your roadmap? So we're saying, we're talking about licensing, we're talking about maintenance, we're talking about RISE with SAP. But what is your options for your roadmap? It doesn't have to be an SAP-driven roadmap. SAP would put you on S/4HANA, software as a service, tomorrow if they could. But that doesn't help you. It doesn't help your business. It doesn't help with the innovation and the economy and the situations that you find yourselves in with your businesses. So what are your options available to you? Now, there is time. You don't have to move right down this roadmap immediately. SAP Business Suite, while very mature, actually works as a core system of record. It's actually fantastic. You've customized it, you've got it working the way you want to work it, you've stabilized it, you're starting to buy more licenses because you're growing, perhaps rolling out to new countries, mergers and acquisitions happen. You don't have to move, and there are a number of options available for you. So one of them, for example, is coming to Rimini Street, where we can actually support that system for you, that SAP estate on premise for up to 15 years. Now, that's not saying that your contract with us has to be for 15 years, but we can support you for a 15-year period, up to 15 years, and keep that system running for you while allowing you to innovate, because we've shown you how you can purchase more licenses, and innovate around the edges, a hybrid model, which a lot of large enterprises are looking at, a hybrid model. So having a core system of record and then modernizing and digitizing and transforming around the edges. And there's absolutely nothing stopping you doing that. So the roadmap could look something like what you see on the screen today. You could decide that actually SAP S/4HANA is becoming mature. It's got some functionality in there that you really like and think, this is the way forward. You could potentially move to that in the future if you need to. Or there's the option to go to the S/4HANA Software as a Service Cloud and have that integrated with your ECC on-premise. We have clients that do that. We have clients that have come to Rimini Street, negotiated good options for their maintenance with Rimini Street, and then use the savings to then start innovating around the edges. So, for example, they've bought SuccessFactors, they've bought Concur, they've bought S/4HANA Software as a Service. These are all SAP products. They're all within, SAP's sphere, which, if that's the direction you want to go, there's nothing stopping you going down the SAP roadmap, but at least you have the option to choose at that point. You're not being forced down. It is now your roadmap. But what we are seeing more and more is this hybrid ERP configuration. Big SAP estates, you need to do some innovation. You don't want to sort of stand still as the businesses change. Blockchain becomes popular, big data becomes popular. So these hybrid estates are becoming more and more common, where you're buying these software as a service, and not just SuccessFactors, but Workday or Peakon, for example, for employee. The big buzzword is client and employee experience. So you can do this while using your core system of record and making savings on the maintenance for it. You don't have to be forced down these roadmaps. And it also allows you to do things like think about, is your roadmap even with SAP or Oracle, for that example? Maybe you want to move to a more modern ERP, because ultimately, the move from ECC onto S4HANA is a full migration. S4HANA is a brand new ERP system. It may say SAP on the tin, it may be written in a similar language, but it is a brand new system. So, you'll have to do a huge migration project, and not just your data, but your configuration, your customizations. And if you've been customizing your system for the last 10, 20 years, you may not know where all the documentation is for it, and that's a lot of work. So perhaps looking at this from a different perspective, if you are going to move to a new version of your software, why not go to the wider market and look what modern ERPs are out there for you? It may not be SAP, it may not be Oracle, it could be Microsoft, it could be Workday. There are others out there that you can look at. So,
James, I would add to that during this time, we offer our clients this freedom to choose, to investigate, to see what is happening in the market. We know that 5 years in the IT world is almost like a lifetime. So many things can change. So many new products can emerge, new methodologies, new technologies. And just like James said, you can consume services and applications from the cloud without interfering with your on-prem software. So one of the misconceptions I hear from my prospects is, when I come to third-party support, do I freeze my system? Absolutely not. The opposite. We allow you to have more time and more resources to expand and to grow your system at your own pace and according to your needs and your decisions.
Thank you, Ronan. And this is one of the key things, actually. One of the messages that we here at Rimini Street is that we can support your system, and not just the core system of record. We can actually support you on this roadmap as well, on this journey that you're about to go on, with a number of services that we have, from L4 support, AMS support, and other support services around that. We can support you on this journey. So if RISE is something you want to go towards, Rimini Street can assist you. If it's a migration to an entirely different ERP system, Rimini Street can assist you on this journey. So have a conversation with us. If this is something you want further discussions on, what is my roadmap? What are my options? What are the licensing implications? Have a discussion with us. We're more than happy to have a conversation around this. We've got experts globally that can do this for you. And if it's around licensing and your concerns around licensing and auditing, you can have a conversation with Doug or other partners as well. We'd be more than happy to have those conversations with you, just to really, get you thinking about what are your options. That, as I've said repeatedly, you don't have to be tied into what SAP or Oracle are telling you have to do, because you don't. This is your system. These are your employees. This is your business. It is your decision how you want to go forward. Now, I'm aware we're running out of time slightly, but some of the final points I wanted to get to, what are the key considerations for moving to third-party support? Doug, from your perspective as an external partner, what do you see some of the key considerations are there when switching to third-party support? What do we need to think about?
So make sure that you understand your license position, the value of your assets, and all of your contracts. Have a good understanding of those ones, right? And make sure that the business understands why you're doing it as well, because you will get people in the business going, oh, that's not right, we should be doing this thing, because people build careers on some of these applications as well. And make sure that, there's a Hearts and Minds campaign internally as well that you look at with regards to making sure that your people are on the journey. Like I think you mentioned earlier, the world doesn't end when you come off support. Right? There's still a heck of a lot of stuff that you can do. So I think getting your team on that journey to understand that the value isn't over. The value continues, even though you're not on support, right? And I think that's a big one that we see with people, is making sure, because like we know, people break things, systems and that still work through. It's people and impacts change and stuff, right? So if you're helping, your team to understand that it's a journey we're going on, this journey is a phase that helps us buy time so that we can go to our next journey. That's the thing with innovation is not going to stop. It's going to carry on. We're still going to be doing our stuff, but then we're going to set ourselves up for a roadmap to wherever that is. And that's going to be part of that journey, right? There's a lot that can be done during that period. So that would be the big one that I'd be saying, because people do impact moves, right? And it's, as long as they understand why you're doing it for the right reasons, I think you can get them on that journey.
Excellent, thank you. Ronan, coming to you for this one. Are there any challenges if I want to return to SAP support in the future? This is a question I know I get asked a lot, but from your perspective, what would you recommend to prospects when you're talking to them about, can I go back to SAP in the future if I do choose to terminate my maintenance?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. And in fact, we have examples of customers who came to us for a few years, went back to the vendor for their own reasons, and then came back to us. This is completely a plausible scenario. SAP or any other software vendor will always welcome you with open arms. It's worth noting that after a period, I think it's 2 years, you are considered as a new customer. So they might try to frighten you with paying back maintenance. This is all, it's not something you will encounter. And we absolutely see this scenario where customers say, okay, I want to come to Rimini Street for a couple of years, think about my roadmap, make the decision right for me at the time which is right for me. And then I might decide to go back to the vendor or another vendor for any future products. Absolutely viable.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we're just about nearly out of time. One of the last questions there was, what are the recommended next steps? And it's very simple. Just take some time. You do not need to move at the pace that SAP wants you to move at as a client. Take some time. Think about what you want to do as a business. Rimini Street are here to be able to have conversation with you about this sort of thing. We have, like I said, an entire unified support services that can enable you to make a move, innovate your systems, keep it stable if you need to. For example, if you're rolling out to other countries, if you're growing your system, your business is growing in today's world, then absolutely, but have the conversation. Take on board what Doug has been talking about with your licensing and with audits. Think about the roadmaps. It doesn't have to be the SAP roadmap. It can be your own roadmap, your own decision, and have those conversations with us. Think about what it is you need. Have a chat with us and we can help you drive that conversation. We're more than happy to have these conversations with you and just allow you to build a bit of time into this, to allow you to really think about this and get the most value out of this decision and the changes that you're going to make over the next sort of 5-10 years in your systems. So I want to say thank you very much for your time today. If you do have any questions that are not in the Q&A that we may have missed today, please do feel free to reach out to us, through the website, through the Rimini Street website, and we will do our absolute best to come back to you very quickly and answer those questions. Hopefully we've answered a lot of questions that you may have had already today. The best thing to do is just keep talking to us. I want to thank my co-host, Ronan, for his time today, and also for Doug for taking his time out. It is very late in Australia, so I do really appreciate your time today, Doug. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful.
James.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.
Oh, hang on a second. Is there any questions? I think there's a question come through.
Ooh.
Okay.
Let's have
someone saying thanks.
Wonderful. Robert, thank you very much for your time. So, yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. And please do reach out to us if you do have any follow-up questions. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.